Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Brainwashed series. I'm super pumped for today's episode. I have an amazing guest over here. I heard his bit of a story already. It's really interesting how people are led to different paths where we find ourselves in a couple of years and we don't really like where we end up, and the life is not as we want it. And it's really interesting how people can also change super fast, because like going from being a police officer to a business owner is a really interesting shift. So I'm really pumped to have somebody like that here, and I want to welcome here. So welcome to the show, Dave Fulk.
Awesome, Adam, man. I appreciate you having me on here. I'm super excited to talk to your audience about what it means to be brainwashed to be broke.
Oh, 100%. All right. So, let's jump right in. And my first opening question for you, this is pretty much like a ritual kind of, when it comes to your area of expertise, what you can see, um, what are the patterns, beliefs, or some type of mistakes that people make when it comes to that keeps them stuck in that place where they are, that that society program us to believe in.
Ooh, man, that's a good one. Uh, God, I don't think there's one right answer to this. You lead with the hardest question out of the gate, I see. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is they think the path is linear, right? They
Mm-hmm.
think point B is where I want to go, point A is where I am, and it's just going to be this straight line. What they don't realize is it's up, down, forward, you go back, you go here. It's not a linear path. And I think that's one of the biggest things that people fail at is, and as a parent today seeing it, I worry about the younger generation because, man, when I grew up as a young kid, I was outside all the time. We didn't have cell phones. We weren't on,
Hundred
like,
percent. Oh my
we
gosh!
we
Yeah, it
we
was.
like, oh my God, we had bumps, we had bruises, we got into fights, we dealt with bullies,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
we didn't have our parents there to helicopter and save us. And I see these kids, I almost want to call them soft, right? And
Mhm.
I see this soft generation that the second they're met with adversity, they give up and they move on. They flip to
Mhm.
something else. Like I see this almost ADHD pattern of nobody's sticking with something. Like they're
Yeah.
met with a little bit of adversity and it's like, I don't like to do that anymore. I'm going to go do this new thing.
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably one of the biggest mistakes that I see is people think that's this linear path and they're not going to have to deal with challenges along the way. And let's be honest, it's that adversity that
Mhm.
truly makes you. It's when you get outside of your comfort level, is when you change, right? The great saying is you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable if you truly want to grow.
Yeah, totally. When it comes to actually that, there is the saying, like, that hard time um create good people, or like very strong people, and bad
Yeah.
easy time, basically. Or I'm not 100% sure how the saying goes, but the easy times create soft people, and so on, and like that's the cycle that is going over and over again, right? But I think there is like a couple of more in between, but you know what I'm talking about. So, and when it comes to these days, what do you think, where we are right now in that type of cycles when it comes to?
I think we're in easy times. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
realistically, let's not kid ourselves. There's hard times going on around the world. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of hard things that are happening.
Mm-hmm.
But if we scale way back and look at the totality of the history of the humankind, we are in a very, in my, I'm in a different part of the world. In America,
Mm-hmm.
we are in a cake, soft, easy part of life right now. Um, do people have trials and tribulations? Yes. But
Mhm.
we have access to anything that we want. I know there's different levels of success and poverty within our country, but the realistic thing is everybody has access to the same things. You know, some people have hard times and they come back from it, but just realistically speaking, we are in a very good time to be alive in this country.
Yeah, yeah. Even though I'm not from US, and that's the way that where I want to heading towards. I think it's very similar in even in Europe, in other countries. Like you can see like everything what is happening with AI, and like those people right now has so much more advantage that we had when it comes to starting businesses, and like you have the informations everything on your plate. We had to dig where to go, what to look for, like how it all works. Now you can have a back and forth conversation literally to tell the AI, hey, you are my coach, world class business coach basically, and tell me like from your research, tell me what is the best way to start a business on or accomplish this type of goal. And usually it seems to me what we can see um, is that people do not take those answers from authority because it's not coming from authority, right?
So yeah, I love AI. I'm huge in
Uh-huh.
AI. I've invested hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in businesses into my companies for AI. I
Mm-hmm.
look at AI differently, right? To me, all these companies are looking at how do I lay people off and replace them with AI. I look at it as how do I augment my current team's ability to be 5 times better, 10 times better?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
how does one of my employees outperform somebody else's by 10x, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
use AI as a tool to augment and strengthen the A players that I already
Ooh,
have.
yep.
But you have to be careful with AI. People give AI too much credit. AI, it's machine learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so AI is artificial intelligence, but it's through machine learning. It's learning through the prompts, the questions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Adam, what about a generation that has no idea what they're doing? What about a generation that has is soft and asking stupid questions? We
Mm-hmm.
can also train AI to be dumb.
Mm-hmm.
In AI, the way that we work it, your chat GPT is going to work different for you than my chat GPT is going to work for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so
Mm-hmm.
we let our AI reinforce our thoughts and beliefs and things like that. And generally we don't challenge it. So one of the things we have to be careful with AI is allowing it to do our thinking for us. Right.
Mm-hmm.
We have to stay thinking critically, right? We have to
Yeah.
challenge the status quo. AI is an amazing tool. And if you're not using it, start because here's the truth. You can either ride the wave or be crushed by it. AI is coming. It's not slowing down. It's only going to speed up. Get on the bandwagon and figure it out. Start using it. I don't care what age you are, what you do. If you're a high school student, if you're 70 years old, figure it out because the wave is coming and you can either ride it or be crushed by it.
Yeah. 100%. So okay, so let's back up to your journey when it comes to um sales, and when it comes to, okay, let give people a little bit of context where you're coming from and what you do, what or how did you get into entrepreneurship.
Sure, we'll start from the very beginning, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
I was born and raised in the Midwest, right in the heart of the country in
Mm-hmm.
Kansas City, Missouri, and grew up with that kind of mentality. Right, there's something called the American Dream, and the American Dream is you go to school, you get a college degree, you go to work for a company for 30 years, and you retire off of a pension. You get married, you get your house with the white picket fence, and you have 2 kids. Right, and that is the brainwashing, if you will, that is instilled into generations, and that was instilled into my parents, and they instilled that into me, and that's what I thought life was supposed to be, and it just never made sense to me, even when I was a kid. And it's funny, I look back now, and I had entrepreneur tendencies as a kid, and we'll get into those. Um, but yeah, so I grew up in kind of a blue collar working family, like where you worked really hard. My dad was an amazing guy, and he worked extremely hard. Uh, I always wanted to be in the military or police officer. That was just something I always wanted to do, but I always loved money. And so in high school, man, I was, I had a job and I got into sales. It was easy and I was really good at it. So I worked for Verizon. I was slinging cell phones part time. Man, I was in high school or just out of high school, like 18 years old, making 60 grand a year working part time. That's insane back when I was that age. I was making almost as much money as my dad, who was a professional, with a college degree and had been working for a company for, 25 years. And I still wanted to be a police officer. So I went, as soon as I was, 20, I got accepted into the police academy, went through the police academy. I was a police officer at 21 years old. I'll never forget. I took a $30,000 pay cut working part-time in sales to become a full-time police officer. My starting salary was $27,000 when I
Wow.
became a cop. And I loved it, man. It's fun to drive around with the woo-woos on and do stuff. And there's a brotherhood and there's a camaraderie to it. And it was really cool. But the politics in it, man, you couldn't pay me to be a cop today. You see all this news and look, are there some bad cops out there? Sure. There's bad people in every industry, carte blanche. There's bad doctors, there's bad lawyers, there's bad this, but the majority of police officers are good dudes, good guys and gals doing the right thing for the right reason and risking their life, every day. And I respect that, but you couldn't pay me to be a cop today. And so
Mhm.
politically, I got out of it and I'm like, okay, what do I want to do now? And I just got back into sales.
Mhm.
So got into the mortgages, started working for the largest bank in the world, HSBC Bank, largest bank in the world. Overnight, walked into an office one day, and I was at the gym, and I had a and they're so they were originally based out of Hong Kong, but their headquarters was in England at the time, which is 5 hours ahead of me, 6 hours ahead of me where I'm at. And so I was at the gym at 7 a.m. and I got a text message from a friend of mine who also worked at the company. He's like, "Did you see this?" And it's an article that was published, right then, or at 10 a.m. that their time, 5 a.m. my time, and it was like HSBC lays off 3,600 employees, shuts down consumer lending division, and I'm like, what? So I'll never forget. I literally stopped what I was doing, left the gym, went home, showered, went straight to the office. I didn't have to be in until I don't know, 9 a.m., 8:30 a.m. I'm there at 7:30, like before anybody else. I open the door, my key gets me in. I'm the first person there. I go to sit down at my computer to log in, access denied. I'm
Ooh.
like, huh. I went to the other computer, access denied. I went to a third computer, access denied. And I knew I was one of those 3,600 people that just got laid off, but nobody had told me about it yet. And, they ended up having a conference call at 9 a.m. with the whole company and basically just told you, hey, everybody's gone. So I went to a different mortgage company. And I was doing everything right. I was the golden child. I was part of their AMP program, the accelerated management program. They were flying me around the country to be with management. Like I was on the fast track to be like executive leadership at this company.
Mhm.
And boom, just gone.
Mhm.
And then, I go to another mortgage company and man, all of a sudden I'm just crushing it. I'm the number one guy. 90 days in, I'm kicking everybody's butt. Within 6 months, they made me the branch manager.
Mhm.
1 year almost to the date, they filed bankruptcy, shut the door, and let everybody go. So here's two times back to back where I worked for the largest bank in the world. Gone, you're unemployed.
Mhm.
I was doing everything right and crushing it. Fast track again, boom, gone. At that moment, I realized there's no such thing as job security. You are brainwashed to be broke if you think that there is such thing as job security as long as you're working for somebody else. And
Mhm.
that's when I really stepped back and man, that was an opportunity for me I was licking my wounds and like, man, what am I doing wrong? What did I do wrong in this situation? How did this happen twice in 2 years? And I've got young kids at home. I've got a
Mhm.
wife and I've got a 1 year old son. And he was two at the time, and my wife's pregnant. I'm like, oh my God, like this happened twice in a year, basically.
That's
And so that's where I was kind of revisited life and who do I want to be when I grow up?
Mhm.
And that's actually when I kind of stumbled into entrepreneurship and said, you know what, if I'm just going to go crazy with this, something that I saw in the mortgages
Mhm.
is 10 people would apply. Eight of those people couldn't get a mortgage because their
Mhm.
credit was bad.
Mhm.
Only two could get applied. And I was like, what happened to these other 8? So I ended up starting actually a credit repair company with somebody else. And that was it, credit guys. And we were off to the races. We got it up to doing $1 million a year in revenue. And that was my first, and the first 12, 18 months. And that was my first taste of entrepreneurship. And that was when the light switch just went off. Like, this is what you were supposed to be doing. You got let go from those other 2 places, and it felt like the world ended twice because you had to, again, linear path, you had to get smacked back to get repositioned, because while I thought I was supposed to be going here, God really needed me to be going here. And I was on a path to go here. And each time was like, no, it was a reset. You're going the wrong direction. You're going the wrong direction. It wasn't until that finally happened. And it was like,
Okay, I'm curious.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm curious. When it comes to those circumstances that happen and the way that we are programmed when it comes to, believing that being employed is the security path, basically. And most of the people are scared of risking and, doing those things because they think that starting a business is actually the riskiest thing ever. And so why do you think is this happening inside, like when in the world, when it comes to programming, society programming, and people who are starting their lives? So why is that happening right from the beginning? So we are like, completely boxed into those boxes. Who does this actually even serve?
Well, look, and I say we hit $1 million and stuff like that. There are plenty of challenges with entrepreneurship. There are plenty of times where I have gone without a paycheck. There are plenty of times where I've had to go home to my wife and look her in the eyes and say, I can't pay us this month just so I can afford to pay my employees. There are times where I'm like, hey, I'm only bringing half home what I thought I was going to bring home. I've started other companies and lost everything. So there is a high risk, with entrepreneurship. There's a high reward, but it is not easy. It's not for the faint of heart. And I think, where does it start? Why do we kind of shy away from it? It comes back from the soft side of it. As a parent, I have 3 kids. I want my kids to be successful in life. If I don't want them to ever get hurt, that's not going to happen. They get hurt all the time. I don't ever want them to have failure. Well, that's not going to happen. They fail all the time. But as a parent, like, I want the best for my kids. I don't want I want them to be safe and secure and happy. And so I think a lot of the times as a parent, our desire to love our kids so much, we instill in them like these beliefs of playing it safe a little bit. And look, if you look at the psychology of the breakdown of it, 90% of what you're going to teach your kids is done by the age of 12. The first 12 years of their life is 80% of who they're going to be for the rest of their life. And so if what they've seen their whole life is their parents playing it safe, playing for a pension, putting into a 401k, not taking risks, like, that's what they know. That is now their programming. And just like with computer, when you're programmed, it's programmed to act and do a desired function. That is your core programming. And most of people's poor programming is that. The other element of that is economical, right? Spoiled rich kids have an entitled mentality and don't understand the hardships of a world. If they've been fed through a silver spoon, they don't know what it's like to go without. They don't know what it's like to eat mustard sandwiches for dinner, and that's just a piece of bread with some mustard on it. They don't know what it's like to, hey, ramen noodles is, a delicacy at times. I never had steak. I never had a steak until I was like 20 something years old. I didn't even know what it was. I had never tasted steak. And so I think there's an element too of where you come from, the background, like, that pushes you and drives you. I promise you, there is more drive in the kids that came from nothing than there is the kids that have everything handed to them. And there's a resilience to it as well. So I think that's, to answer your question, I think it's those 2 elements.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, when, in your opinion, where is coming from the programming? Is it coming from like teachers, or literally like from our parents, or is it like overall through the generations that is handing each generation to the other?
Well, who you're going to be in 5 years, Adam, is based on the people you meet and the books you read. That's your whole life. The
Mm-hmm.
version, you're 29 now, right? I think you said, if I remember
Yeah, yeah.
correctly. Who you're going to be at 34 years old right now over the next 5 years is who you meet and what books you read, right?
Mm-hmm.
What input, what you're feeding, and who you're surrounding yourself with. If you've ever heard the show me your network, I'll show you your net worth. You are the
Yep.
sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as a kid, you don't understand that concept. Your influences are your parents and your school teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And we have, over in America, we have a school system that is programmed to not design critical thinking. It's not to challenge the status quo. It's to do exactly what you're told when you're told. It's to, I say jump, you say how high, right? That is the programming of our educational system, unfortunately. They teach basic skills, and unfortunately, they don't even teach life skills anymore. They teach stuff that is completely irrelevant in a lot of capacity into the world today. They don't teach people how to balance a checkbook anymore. They don't teach AI in schools, right? These are things that people need to know. These are fundamental life things that how the world works today. Common Core math is not something that I do at 44 years old. So leadership skills, because for those first 18 years of your life, your most major influences are your parents and your school teachers. That's where the programming is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unless they get different inputs, they'll never experience anything different. That's why one of the things that I did years ago, I've got my son's 18, he's a senior, he's getting ready to go off to college. He's being recruited to play soccer. He's a collegiate athlete. He'll be a soccer athlete. I've got a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old. I don't do allowances, right? So one thing over in America, it was just like, oh, you get an allowance to go spend money. And I always had a rule that you work your mind or your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
You go read a book. I will pay you $20 for reading that book. You go grab one of dad's books off of dad's shelf and read it. I'll pay you $50. And so I would pay them to work their mind. And so it's really interesting, some of the stories that have come from that. But one of the things that I have the gift of is I do know entrepreneurship now. I understand what it is. I go to conferences. I go to masterminds. I take my kids with me when I can. So they're experiencing something as a child that is completely opposite input than what they're getting from school. So I'm allowing them to have conflicting opinions and be able to have critical thinking. Like, hey, question everything. That's the one thing I've never understood. Curiosity is so good, right? We learn through curiosity, and then we just take that out of you. The thing I hate the most that parents say is when a kid asks why, and they go, because I said so. Well, that's not a good answer. Like, I know you as a parent, you just want them to listen, but at the same time, we're trying to beat that curiosity out of the kids. Don't ask me again because I said so. Well, no. Always ask me. Always challenge the status quo. Be curious. Never stop being curious. And I think that's another thing too, that we beat the curiosity out of kids. And so by the time they get into their teens, they get into college, they get into that, they're less curious than they were when they were 6 or 7 years old, right? Think of a 6 or 7-year-old. All they do is ask, why? 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 We don't do that later in life, right? We stopped asking why because we've been taught not to.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Do you think it's something to do with embarrassment, even like how people that they would be thinking that they are dumb or stupid because that they're asking so many questions about it, or annoying, or they can actually like repel people from doing those things?
Look, nobody wants to raise their hand and say I don't know. Like we have a culture of nobody wants to look stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true. Like, I don't want to look stupid. Adam, I bet you don't want to look stupid. But the problem is, dude, if you don't know, just say you don't know. It's okay. But a lot of the times people don't want to say they don't know. And so instead of saying, hey, I'm not really sure, or I don't know why I said that, or I don't know the reason behind it, they just, because I said so, right? They don't want to look stupid because they don't have a formulated answer. And we're taught not to question authority. Well, authority figures are your parents. Authority figures are your coaches. Authority figures are your teachers. And we're taught our whole lives not to question authority. And if you challenge the status quo and question authority, you're doing the wrong thing.
100%. Yeah, this is the programming, like literally bake everything, because like when you think about, the way that we live, the way we eat, the way we dress ourselves, it's pretty much everything is from some type of programming that we've been, programmed by somebody, in either somebody who is influential in our life, our parents, teachers, or somebody like that. And the thing is that most people don't understand and don't even care if the programming serves them or it doesn't. And like what I mean by that, like what I mean if it serves them, is it actually leading them towards the goal they want? Most of the people, they don't even have goals. That's another thing. Like they just living, and that's another problem there.
Yeah.
Right. So from
They're
okay,
living
so from
without
your
intention,
perspective,
right?
do you have anything around that?
Around what?
Around the, like what I just said about that people are not having goals, for example, or that we've been programs around pretty much every area of our life, based on how we dress, what we do, how we eat. Everything is basically programming that somebody, like the society, program us the way how we supposed to do something, even though and we don't even question it, because we think this is the normal way how it's supposed to be. But the question for you should be, if it serves you the way where you want to go, that programming that happened, this is serves you to get where you want to be. This is help you. This is serves you where to, for example, achieve your goal in a business or so. Do you have anything around that type of topic? What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, there's such thing as society norms, right? There's the
Mm-hmm.
normal society rules. And herd mentality is a real thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so one of the best examples that I can give is getting on an elevator,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you get on an elevator, what's the first thing you do? You just want to be quiet and shy and just be back there. Like nobody
Mm-hmm.
wants, everybody, if you ever ride on an elevator, it's like one of the quietest things ever. That's why they have music playing. So it's not just dead silence. But an elevator is one of the most awkward things. If somebody gets on and is like, hi, how you doing? It's like, whoa, like that's not normal. Don't talk to me. We're on an elevator. And I know everybody's experienced this before because when you get on an elevator, you're just programmed to like not talk. Well, where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
And so society changes slowly.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at 50 years ago, there are things that are normal now that weren't normal 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And you can talk about major topics like, sexuality, right?
Mm-hmm.
50 years ago, there wasn't umpteen genders.
Yes.
But now that's kind of the norm. Like to say I'm gay is very different today than it was 50 years ago. Transgender didn't, was so taboo back then, it wasn't even a thing. And there's lots of examples with that, not just sexuality, but society, the norms of society, people just tend to want to fit in, right?
Mm-hmm.
People don't want to be the nail sticking out, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Um, and so people want to conform, right? We truly want to conform. We want to fit in. And so it's finding that herd that you need to fit into, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so generally society as a whole, in America, at least for sure, and I would guess this, I've been to Europe several times, and it is, you don't challenge the status quo. You
Mm-hmm.
don't rock the boat, if you will, is another analogy, right?
Yep.
You just go with the flow, and that's just kind of the thing it is. And it's, one of the other sayings, well, that's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why? Why is it that way? Like, I want you to stay curious and say, well, why is it that way? right? One of my companies, all my companies, one of our core values is challenge the status quo, ask
Mm-hmm.
better questions,
Mm-hmm.
right? I want people, you know, have you ever heard the saying, Adam, finish this for me if you know it. If it ain't broke,
If you're not broke, not 100% sure. No.
okay. So it's an American saying. It's if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Okay.
Well, that's
Okay.
bullcrap. But if it ain't broke, make it better.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that's kind of the mentality. Like we have all these things like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Don't challenge the status quo. Don't rock the boat. Go with the flow. It is what it is. Right. That's just the way it is. Why? Like this just it just drives me insane that as a society, these are the conforming restraints or shackles that we've put on our thinking.
Right.
One of the books I always like to give book recommendations for different reasons. You know, I've read thousands of books, but one, I mean, you've probably had this mentioned a million times. Brainwashed to be broke, Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? That was one of the first books that I read that was just instrumental for me of making me think different. As I've grown as an entrepreneur, one of the books that top 5 books for me is called The Road Less Stupid by Keith
Mm,
Cunningham.
okay.
And I love it because at the end of each chapter, he talks about this thing called thinking time. And you should have some introspective thinking time every day. And at the end of each chapter, he ends each chapter is based on a different topic, different principle, but he ends each chapter with like 10 or 15 different questions that you could sit down and ask yourself. And it's that being curious, it's asking questions, it's challenging the status quo. And if more people did that, we'd be in a very different world.
Well, my question is now when it comes to your kids and what you can see what is actually happening in the world with those brainwashing patterns and everything what is going on. Um, how do you prepare your kids on the world that will come when they're gonna be ready to step into their adult uh, you know
Yeah,
life?
and I think one of the things people automatically assume is, "Oh, Dave, you're a successful entrepreneur. You want all your kids to be entrepreneurs." No, that's not true. I want my kids to be whatever they want. You know, my son wants to be an entrepreneur. He's going to go to college to study business and entrepreneurship. But my daughter, my youngest daughter, wants to be a pediatrician. Right? Like, what I want them to do is I want them to stay curious. Same thing. I want them to
Mhm,
ask questions. I want to teach them critical thinking,
mhm,
right? Meaning I want them to think for themselves. And if something doesn't make sense, I want them to not just go, okay, and accept that as the answer. I don't want them to accept it is what it is. I want them to go, but why? Right. And so I teach them to be self learners, right? To
mhm,
what they consume. And that's why I pay for, reading books. That's why I pay for, working their mind, if you will. Because I'm more interested in that to teach them how to critically think and to ask questions and to
mhm,
challenge the status quo. And that doesn't mean they have to be an entrepreneur. That just means they need to be able to think for themselves.
mhm,
And so that's one of the biggest things that I do is I want them to ask those questions,
mhm,
to challenge the status quo, right? I teach them that, look, nothing's given to them and life's not easy.
mhm,
It's not fair. Congratulations. There is nothing in life that is fair. And if you're always looking for fair, you're looking for the wrong thing,
mhm,
right? I want them to look, failure's okay, right?
mhm,
I want to give them, I tell this to my employees too. Like, I want to give them enough freedom and autonomy to make their
mhm,
own decisions and to make their own mistakes. When things go right, we're going to high five from it. When things go wrong, we're going to learn from it, right?
mhm.
I don't want them to fail. Um,
Yeah.
I want them to know that there's more inside of them, that there's a gift inside of them greater than their current platform. And I want them to know that, look, most people operate within their comfort zone. So, Adam,
Mhm.
humor me for a second. Take your, raise your arm as high as you can from where you are right now. Raise it as high as you can in the air. Now raise it just a little bit higher. Okay, that's good. So that you can put it down.
Okay.
So that's kind of my point here, right?
Uh-huh.
I asked you very clearly to raise your arm as high as you could. And then I asked you a second time to raise it higher and you were able to.
Mhm.
Why didn't you raise it that high the first time? And
Uh-huh.
so generally, this is our comfort zone. This is where we live in.
Right.
This is where we grow. This is uncomfortable. It's not comfortable for you to reach that high, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that is what I want them to do is you live here, but you have to be okay going here, right? You have to be
Mm-hmm.
okay to get uncomfortable. And because that's, the instruction was clear, raise your hand as high as you can, but yet why were we able to do more? Because we have our comfort zone and a lot of times we don't like to get out of it. And so I expose them to get out of their comfort zone. That's why I take them to masterminds and conferences with me. Like they don't know half of what's being said. They don't know anything. They're sitting around people that are multimillionaires, 100 million, dollar companies, $1 billion companies, and people that have a lot of success. And just being surrounded by that is a learning experience. Um, but it's different because, my son was, I'll never forget, he was like, Dad, everybody's so positive and they're
Uh-huh.
always trying to figure out how to make a bigger impact. And it's like he's never experienced that before. You don't get that from a group. If you get a whole bunch of high school teachers together,
Yeah.
guess what they're going to do? They're going to be bitching and complaining about something. They're going to be pissed off about this kid. This is where be fucking awesome comes from, right? Um, I was at years ago. I was in New York with Kevin Harrington, one of my business partners, original shark from Shark Tank, and we were sitting down with Brad Lee. We were at a cigar bar, and Brad Lee, if you know Brad, he's a crazy guy. He looks over at me. He goes, "Dave, let me ask you something." He goes, "If I give you $1 million right now, would you take it?" Well, yeah. And he goes, "What if I said if you took it, you wouldn't wake up tomorrow? Would you still take it?" I said,
Ah.
"No." He goes, "Damn right you wouldn't take it." He goes, "You just said waking up is worth more than $1 million. You better fucking act like it." This
Mm-hmm.
is Brad, right? And I'm like, wow. And I'm like, the way he said that, it was just so impactful that I'm like, he's right. Like
Mm-hmm.
we have a choice every day when we get out of bed. We can wake up to be mediocre. We can wake up to be fucking awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I choose to be fucking awesome. I wake up every day thankful. I praise God and pray to God every morning that he wakes me up because if he woke me up, that means he's not done with me. I still have work to do on this earth. Um, I wake up with energy ready to go because I want to make an impact that day. Some days, and when you ask me what kind of day I'm having, it's the best day of my life. And people are like, oh my God, you don't have bad days. Trust me, I have more bad days than most people. I have plenty of bad days, but that doesn't mean that it's still not the best day of my life. I'm here, I'm awake, I'm healthy, I can do something about my bad day. And the other thing that I hate is the mentality of a bad moment doesn't create a bad day. It doesn't create a bad week. It doesn't create a bad month. Yes, something bad happened in that moment, but you get to decide how long you live in the negativity.
Yeah.
If you say that moment, now my whole day is ruined, well, your whole day is only ruined because that's what you want. That's how you're responding to it. That is your mental capacity and how you're responding to this. And I think that's the other thing, Adam, is as a society, we are so negative by nature.
Uh-huh.
And to have a positive mindset, to live a life of gratitude is so tough. And, it's not easy. The analogy that I give is, as we're driving somewhere, we don't count how many green lights we got to drive through. We count how many red lights we got stuck at.
Yeah.
And they're not called red lights. They're called traffic lights, but we call them red lights or we call them stop lights because we associate the negative to it. We're not grateful that we drove through 20 green lights to get here and we're complaining about the one stoplight we got stuck at. And we have to change that mentality of positivity and gratitude, right? You can be thankful for something even in your bad times, and trust me, the bad times are what creates the good times. You mentioned earlier, hard times create, hard people, soft times create soft people,
Yeah.
soft people create hard times.
Yeah.
Um, and that's true. The mentality of people that is true. You can be grateful. It is a proven fact. You cannot be in a negative state of mind when you're showing gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
When you are being grateful for something, you cannot be in a negative state of mind.
Yeah. 100%. Do you, the way that you said it, basically, when it comes to, that the happiness, it's coming basically from inside of you, right? So we think, or like we pay more attention to things that coming from outside of us instead of inside of us, and that's the reason why like you can be grateful, you can be happy at any moment. It doesn't matter if you are, if the moment is bad or good or whatever, how you're gonna call it. Because you can be happy anytime because it's coming in from inside of us, right? And people are so, affected by other experiences, that somebody did that, somebody said that, or whatever, like anything that may happen during the day, and that affects how they behave, how they, you know, uh, how they feel, and so on, which is pretty sad because like you can be, because it's your choice, literally is your choice if you're going to be happy or not, because nothing from outside of you should be determining if you're going to be happy or not, right? Because
Yeah.
if you woke up, like so many people, we are programmed the way that so many people think like that there are, that everything what is happening during the day, that's determining how we're gonna feel, if we're gonna be happy or if we're gonna be sad. But you and we overlook at things that are those little things, even, or it can be a big thing, but it's literally like the way that we, starting every day and so on. And
All right. I'm just gonna chat here because I think he lost some internet, but it looks like I'm still recording and still live, so we're gonna keep this party going. Kind of going where he was talking about. One thing that I know is if, then, when, and but. Those are all dirty, nasty words because what those are is we put things out there, but we're not going to achieve them until this thing happens. When this happens, I'll do this. If this happens, I'll go here. And so if we always keep everything at arm's reach distance, we're always keeping it that far away from ourselves. And we don't want that, right? You don't want to say when this happens, because then what you're doing is you're just keeping everything at arm's reach distance. And let me tell you, you have survived 100% of your worst days. And every challenge that I've ever been through in my life, while it sucked at the time, and sometimes it felt like it was the worst thing ever, I came back better and I came back stronger from it. My life is in a better position from it. And so that's kind of where the gratefulness and gratitude. So you can't have a rainbow without rainy days, right? So you can't appreciate the good days until you've had the bad days. So bad days are okay, but you get to choose how long you live in that bad day. Adam's back. We got his internet restored. Adam, I kept the party going. I just kept going and started
thanks so
talking.
much. I
So
don't know what happened. I think like internet went down or something like that, and I
all
think
good,
we
man.
lost the
We kept
connection.
the thing going. And so that's, you are the creator of a universe, and your life energy is like a rechargeable battery,
Hmm.
right? And when you're stuck in that negative cycle, it drains faster. Everybody has
Yeah,
their phone, and
100%.
if you leave an app open, it drains faster. When you're stuck in a negative mindset, it's draining you faster. You're
Hmm.
more tired, you're grumpy, you're less patient, right? And it's just your battery goes down faster. So you have to have a pattern interrupt. You have to recognize when you're in that moment and be like, and you have to stop the drain. And one thing that I've done, like I'm not immune to this. I still struggle with this. Just I've realized it, and I'm self-aware of it. And so I've got 5 people in my phone that are called rechargers. This is just me. So they're rechargers. I know that if I call them and be like, I need a recharge, man, they're going to just amp it up to 10. They're going to pour into me. They're going to just give me energy, love. They're going to just give me gratitude. They're going to just go all out and be like, Adam, you're an amazing guy, blah, 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 blah. Right. And then bam, they're just recharged me. And that's all it is. The conversation doesn't need to be anything else. They did what they needed to do. It may be a minute, maybe 2 minutes, and boom, done. I'm gone. I'm off. I'm back. I've stopped the bleed and I recharged my battery. And so I recommend that you find those rechargers in your life.
Hmm.
And when you find yourself having a bad day, how can you stop the drain? What can you do? And so there's so many ways you can do this. You have to remember all the things that are going great in your life and be grateful for them. We overlook things like I was able to take a shower with running water today. I have electricity. I'm freaking in my office talking to somebody halfway across the world via the internet. Like these are all amazing things to be grateful for that we overlook on a daily basis. So yeah, you can be stuck on the bad and you can be stuck in a bad day, or you can reprogram your mind and look at all the good things that you have. And I keep a folder that I call feathers. I don't know if you've ever heard the terminology, Adam, a feather
No,
in your cap,
no,
right?
no, no, never. No.
So there's a saying like a feather in your cap, and
Uh-huh.
that means like it's a good thing. It's an award. It's an achievement type of thing.
Right.
And so when I have what I call feather moments, I save those, I document them, and I keep them in a folder. So if I have like an employee like this, this was a feather moment for me. I had an employee mail me this for Christmas, and this says, "Behind every successful team is a boss who believed in them first. Thank you." Like this, I'll never use this notebook because this will be a feather for me, and it'll stay on my shelf and my shelf space. If I get a comment like that from somebody else, if somebody that I'm coaching or something like that, I save those emails, I save those posts on social media, I save those text messages where I've made an impact on somebody's life and they give back to me. And all it does is take me to go to that feather folder for like 2 minutes
Mm-hmm.
and look at those amazing things and look at the impact that I'm making on people and look at the amazing things. Man, my bad day's gone.
All right. Thank you so much, brother. It was amazing to have you here and chat with you. Last question for you: where people can find you to either work with you or support you?
Yeah, so the easiest place to find me is probably my website, davefulk.com. So that's DAVEFULK.com. There you can get a hold of me. You can schedule some time with me. You can see my different things that I'm involved with. That's probably the easiest place to go is just davefulk.com.
That's awesome. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so for being here, and for everybody who's listening. We will see you in the next episode. Bye for now.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, everybody.